back to the Critical Engineer. On today's video, I'm going to be discussing a little bit of some tips to kind of give you guys, especially if you're college students, um, going through the journey of having whatever discipline of engineering as a major. Um, for those who are particularly kind of struggling with internships or building up their own resumes. um, the number one tip I can really give you guys, um, if you're not really able to get a internship for the summer, or if for those who are ever interested in doing internships throughout, while they're currently in college. um, the number one thing that helped me with kind of filling my resume up a bit was um research projects. um a lot of universities might have you know some extra projects or research projects that might be offered through some teachers, not every single one, but for me, I was lucky enough to um get into a research program, which I got paid for. But I was essentially picking up or carrying on a project that was done from previous students who had graduated the year before, on developing some UAVs, essentially some micro UAVs for the military. Now, granted, I don't know if um, whether or not it's still an ongoing thing, but I know at the time, um, there was a couple different schools who were actively doing this project. But essentially, we was able to get paid through universities, or at least the government funding at the time was going ahead and paying for a couple different universities to go ahead and have some students just work on building micro UAVs um, for the military. And then obviously, once built up and proven or even tested, you have the opportunity to go to um, one of the military bases to go ahead and test out your actual design. Um, and that's just one instance of a project where it was offered by a teacher who was able to give students some more experience throughout college, um, and be able to add that to the resume and kind of slowly but surely develop their skills as they end up going through the engineering programs. Another one that I did, which essentially I um, proposed a another independent research, essentially, studying jet engines, performance, how to make them more efficient, essentially, um, in which it didn't end up getting or at least winning um, the little research grant that the universities was giving out. But typically, they would go ahead and you can formally type out exactly what the project or the idea you're trying to do, um, and then formally present it, right? In which the university, based off of, they read your kind of your proposal, and essentially end up making their decisions on which projects they want to end up going and funding, right? You can always, you should be able to, hopefully you should be able to go ahead and offer, or at least propose a project that you might think might be good, and kind of use that as a way to build up your resume. I always suggest that just to build up your own skills, you can always do, which is much more common in, see, with a lot more software developer students, where they might have their own, little side projects where they might, build out a portfolio of, projects that they might have done, even if, their own side projects or just stuff they've done throughout school. That is always a good thing to keep track of. It helps build the resume and also show how you can apply the skills you gain through college on your own time, essentially. Because obviously, going through internships, they look at your grades. Some internships look at your grades, your GPA, essentially. Um, and then if there is any other experience, now for me, like I said, I didn't have the opportunity to go ahead and do a formal internship, um, but I offset and compensated for that while with doing um, side projects or working with teachers to go ahead and just do some random work, right? Um, Being able to show what you can do versus just saying I'm a good student or I'm a good test taker um, is always going to be much more of a better visual and get a better, have these companies have a better understanding of exactly how you're able to apply the, the knowledge that you've gained so far. Um, and you don't have to rely on your, your university or college to go ahead and do these things. You can do it on your own. Um, Apply whatever you can, even if it's for, if you're on the more manufacturing side or you're on the mechanical engineering, robotics, whatever. Do little small projects, do some random design work, right? Um, be able to showcase what you're capable of doing. If you do not have a formal resume with I've done internships for X company, I was here for this summer. And also sometimes, some internships might allow you to go ahead and keep working for them if they're relatively close to where you're going to school at, to keep doing a couple hours a week and continuously build up that consistent experience, right? um, there's also co-ops, which co-ops are essentially some students might take a semester off or a year off from school and work for a company, during that time period and basically boost your resume. Then once you're done with a co-op, you go back to school and then you finish up. At one of my jobs at TLD, we had a couple co-op students, which the school he went to, they pushed co-ops quite frequently, and they kind of allowed or designed the engineering program to have space for students who want to do co-ops. Um, so that's pretty dope. They put them in their own, housing, or if they're local, they stay at home with their parents or whatever, and go ahead and travel back and forth, get the experience, and then once they're done, they go back to school. Um, Internships are not necessarily the make it or break it. To be fair, I've gotten this far without doing a formal internship. Um, but it's really going to be how it's going to come down to how resourceful you decide to be on this path that you're taking. Um, it's the going through the journey of college. You're gonna it's gonna be a lot of trial and error, especially when you're trying to have that dream job um, or whatever location you want to essentially be at. It's going to, once you're in school, it's going to be how do you get yourself closest to that goal or getting, that first step in the door to whatever company you want to work for. Um, Going ahead and figuring out exactly what it takes is something that's going to be kind of different for a lot of people. But your main thing is going to be that there's going to be competition regardless. So how can you go ahead and make yourself stand out, right? Whether or not it's just going through the interview processes and kind of being able to highlight exactly what you learned, what you're capable of doing. Do you have any examples of these skills? Um, and I talked to a lot of my some of my friends who are software developers for a couple of different companies. They always have portfolios of work that they've done on the side, or their own little side projects. And I highly encourage a lot of you who are going to be who see this video to push yourselves to go ahead and do side projects, or even if you have a class project, right? If you have a class project that you've worked on and that you're proud of and you think would be worth kind of sharing with whoever you're interviewing with, by all means, go ahead and do it. Which whatever you can do to go ahead and um, really advertise yourself, essentially, is going to be the best. It's going to be the by far the best way of going about doing it. Um, so really take the opportunities to go ahead and get whatever you can on that resume. Um, it's going to be a bit rough. It's going to be a bit challenging. Um, especially if you can't go too far, or the internships during the summer aren't offering, um, housing for the interns. Some companies will actually put their interns in an apartment or a house that they might have or they might own just for interns, and put them in there, and then basically you're carpooling the entire time. Um, but not every single company is like that. So please don't go in expecting that every single company is going to be or is going to be willing to go ahead and assist or have something already set up for the interns. Um, it's typically for a lot of the more you typically find in a lot of the more larger, well-known, you know, well-established companies will have these type of kind of this program or budget that they end up, a portion of their budget they end up taking out just for housing interns during the summer. Uh, and you're always going to end up getting, you're going to be end up getting, basically competing with hundreds of with applicants for these internships. And internships as a whole are always ongoing. It doesn't always have to be during the summer. It can be during the school year, just whether or not you have the time um, and the means to travel to those internships. So sometimes you might end up adjusting your class schedule or picking a schedule that ends up fitting, so you can have some time to go ahead and go in to your internship and then go to class right afterwards. So, I mean, outside of that, I mean, like I said, it's just really how are you going to market yourself? Um, Competition is always going to be a big challenge, and some people might just honestly just not even decide to do an internship, and just kind of just focus on getting good grades, doing what you need to do, just to make sure you graduate. But if you can take any of those projects that you've done, that showcase skills that you've attained, put that into a portfolio, or even create a website that I think there's some various website where you can go ahead and just highlight certain projects you've done, or even for LinkedIn. I see a lot of people on LinkedIn um, to go that goes ahead and say like here's all the products that I've done, right? Um, and even just touching base on that, LinkedIn or any yeah, really LinkedIn is the common right now. Um, LinkedIn, get into LinkedIn as soon as possible. Um, what I used to do, or what I still currently do, is get your connection, especially with your classmates or whoever else, even your university, your professors, right, or your academic advisors. Um, Create a LinkedIn and go ahead and immediately start building connections. It doesn't even matter, if it's anybody that's with directly within your major, but build those connections as soon as you can. Especially if you end up having friends who or people who end up becoming recruiters, um, and you can go ahead and work with recruiters, which is also another point. You can contact recruiters in the area or who might represent or might be getting paid to look for people to hire. Um, get connected with those recruiters. Um, I've had nothing but great experience with recruiters. It's typically how a lot of people have found me for my current job and my previous job. But just recruiters are always going to be looking out. And the more stuff you end up adding on to that list or experiences, a lot of recruiters will look at that and read through that and be like, hey, you might be a good fit for this. Sometimes it might end up being a dead end as far as overall, if whether or not it kind of falls into your experience, your interests. But get into LinkedIn as soon as you can. Connect with a myriad of different people from different industries, different majors and stuff like that. get that done and situated right from the beginning. Um, oh, I forgot. Sorry, this is a bit, a little jumbled up. When it comes to you doing research, right, or your own research, by all means, if you have friends who have similar interests, or it's just something y'all might get together and kind of just look at and just doing something just to put on your resume, by all means, go ahead, toss some ideas with friends that you're cool with, and see if they're willing to kind of sit down and do some research and kind of digging into just topics that you guys might have a common interest in. I've done that with when I was in college. I had friends from a year under me or a year above me, and we kind of just sat down and kind of just did different things. Especially when I was doing the micro UAV, I was with people from different majors: electrical engineers, computer engineers, mechanical engineers, or even engineering technology students. You never know exactly you know where things might go, and being able to just get stuff down on your resume will always benefit you. Internships sometimes can be a bit more. They can be a bit picky on who they allow, especially if they're looking at your GPA. Which typically that's how it goes. But if you're not able to get into an internship, it's not the end of the world. You can go ahead and still be able to build yourself up, even if it's like, okay, I don't get looked at, or I'm not able to get an internship until after college, because sometimes they might have those. Dog again, my bad. Um, oh, that's what I was saying. Sometimes they offer internships to recent graduates as well. They sometimes might have programs where you can go ahead, graduate, and you still haven't been able to find a job, but you want to get into a company, see if they have post grad internships. Or if you're going into your master's, see if they have any graduate internships as well. You can always find something. And even if you're in your master's and you just want to focus on research, that research that you do, or if you go take the master's of science route, which is a thesis, which is you take a thesis route, um, you can go ahead and use that on your resume. Whatever projects you do during your time at school, put that down on your resume. I know for one of my classes we had to basically calculate the inlet and outlet flow um of a what is it called, a wind tunnel. That's the word. Basically taking I think a 1/6 scale model of a car or some type of vehicle, and you essentially you end up calculating your inlet outlet flows, and then also with your change in volume within the ducting itself, and then you basically would then afterwards end up upscaling or basically applying a scale factor to the actual 1/6 model to get your actual size, and you get your relative values off of that. Things like that, you can go ahead and put that down, especially if you want to go into research. Like if you want to go into research, your best bet, make your own research by all means. Like do that, and it'll put you in a better position than as if you just decided not to do anything altogether. So it's never the end of the world if you do not, land an internship. But if you're interested in a topic, do your own research, create your own development, work with advisors on on whatever idea you have. And a lot of times your advisors do have a lot of connections with different companies. Um, like a couple of my advisors, or at least like my teachers and advisors, have a lot of connect. They had a lot of connections with NASA. Um, so a lot of students were able to go ahead and get into NASA, just basically solely off of that. Um, so it's never the end of the world. Just kind of make the best of it and be resourceful. If you're going to just be kind of just comfortable where you're at, you're not going to get far, especially in engineering. You're not going to get far whatsoever. I mean, you can be those people who just get their first job and just stay there. But for those who obviously who might want to kind of experience different things or develop, and grow further up, you're going to have to be resourceful and really dedicated to kind of getting to that end goal. Um, for a lot of people, that can really be the make it or break it, depending on what industry you're in. So for those college students out there, go ahead and make the best of the time. Make the best of the time you have to get your resume somewhat, kind of stacked with research, with different experiences you can possibly have, especially, or if you're like, you work in some of the labs. If you do have any engineering labs, by all means, go ahead and see if they have any positions where you can work in the labs, helping other students with projects. I know we had some who, some folks worked with one of the labs dealing with 3D printers. Whatever experience you can gain throughout college, by all means, get that experience in. It doesn't have to be an internship. It can be research. It can be some side projects or something that has to deal with, you know, the particular engineering, major you're picking up. Um, and I think that's really it. I can't really think of anything else. This is just just going off the top of my head. And sorry, it's a little bit tired. You can really tell or not, but I'm trying to stay awake right now. Balancing, two jobs is starting to kick my ass a little bit. So, um, but hey, you decided to suffer for this, so go ahead, stick to it. It's going to be great in the end. Being an engineer can take you so far. Seeing different things. I know people who travel to different countries for work, um, or even just travel throughout the states is doing different things. So engineering is really going to come down to what you want and how you make the best of it. And if you want to be one of those people who can travel, do all the stuff, you have those opportunities. Being an engineer as well. So by all means, do not box yourself in. Do not limit yourself. There are a lot of different avenues you can take, starting as early as even with high school. Um, so it's really going to come down to exactly what you want to do, where do you see yourself, um, and really making sure you put yourself in the best possible position. Me, I've made a lot of mistakes, and I, could do better, but I learned now, and that's why I'm trying to, kind of convey this over to you guys on exactly um, things that I've learned, things that I've experienced, and obviously, what I'm currently experiencing now. Obviously, granted, I'm not, it's not like I'm looking for another job right now, so I can, kind of go into a bit of which I've been saying this. I'll make a video kind of breaking down the different avenues you can possibly take for as many of the majors that I can possibly cover. I'll talk to some people I know to get their perspective and see if even bring them on for a almost like a little, I guess, podcast ish interview, kind of asking them about what just respective to what they their major, what tips they have, especially for the ones that are in my generation, graduating in around 2020 and so and up essentially, excuse me, and we can go from there. So like I've said, always like, comment, subscribe. Um, Let me know exactly what you guys want to hear or what you guys want me to kind of cover. Um, I'm learning, and thus I'll be hopefully conveying some useful bits of information over to you guys. So without further ado, I'll end the video here. Catch you guys in the next one. Deuces.